Hello and welcome to Demigod Central. I am your host and my name is Rusty. I am in absolutely no way a stranger to this fandom, as I have been living and breathing in this world since its early days between the publications of The Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. This has been a project I've been wanting to tackle for some time and figured what better time to jump in than the release of Percy Jackson, the Olympians, the series. In our inaugural episode, I would like to do a breakdown episode of Episode 1 of the Percy Jackson, the Olympians series. Season 1, Episode 1. I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Be warned now, as in this video we will discuss plot points that will either occur later on in the Lightning Thief book, as well as other books in the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles series. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, click off now, but if you're still here, well, hey, you're a demigod, of course you are. The episode opens with, well, those famous lines. Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. Well, wait, I'll just let you hear it for yourself.
Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood.
Percy then walks the audience through, briefly, what is about to happen in monologue of sorts. We then cut to Percy explaining how exactly is he a troubled kid. Well, it starts off with something we didn't see in the books, but Percy seeing a Pegasus on top of the school rooftop, or adjacent to the school rooftop, but that doesn't mean Percy's not then perceived as this sort of out there character to his classmates or teachers. We see various monsters he then drew over the years in his notebooks following seeing that automaton, rhinoceros, in the streets of New York. We also get to see a glimpse of how that mist works, with it shifting back into that trash truck as well. By taking a look at Percy's notebook here, we clearly see he's seen a lot of monsters over his couple years here. We are then quickly introduced through this time-lapse almost to Grover, who is revealed to be Percy's friend. Percy made a friend, that's great. And Grover then quickly introduces us to our next Easter egg of Mythomagic. Mythomagic, for those of you who don't know, is something that gets first mentioned in Book 3, The Titan's Curse, which is very popular to Nico D'Angelo, a very popular character who... The story then continues with us going to the field trip, and Percy kind of has this memory after Mr. Brunner's speech while trying to do the assignment of something his mom then tells him of how he got his name Perseus. We're then jumping back into present day with Walker Scoble as Percy, sitting there staring up at Perseus, and mutters. This kind of eggs Nancy Boba Fett to kind of tease him a bit. And we see Mrs. Dodds doing her thing. We then cut to the fountain outside, and this is a beat for beat of what happens in the original book with, hey, Percy doesn't really know what happens, gets agitated, and Nancy somehow ends up in the fountain. It's like the water jumped out and grabbed her. In this, it seems like she was kind of almost pushed into the water from Percy's perspective. It's almost like the mist is playing with us even in this moment here, which we then see as Miss Dodds shifts. Instead of calling Percy back into the Met, she just kind of shifts and almost lets the mist melt off of her, revealing her coat to have actually been her wings. And in turn, she turns out to be Electo. thought this scene was great, and we see Percy, the pen Mr. Brunner gave him, it starts shimmering, fumbling around, vibrating intensely, and all of a sudden she's gone. Thought the scene was executed perfectly, basically. It shows Percy's headspace of how one of these encounters occurs, and then the follow-up of Mr. Brunner and Grover, his probably two closest acquaintances and friends at the school, suddenly being in utter disbelief, really demoralizes Percy here. He is made to feel like he is seeing things, and further that feeling of isolation he's felt his whole life, that he's different. This episode then goes on to Percy getting kicked out of school, and this was where a real difference took place from the books, and I actually commend it really well. We see Grover actually getting Percy kicked out of the school. It wasn't Percy's own doing or the school's doing, it was Percy trying to say, I don't know what happened, because he didn't. And instead, Grover throws him under the bus. And Mr. Brunner's there and can't do anything about it. The Yancey headmaster's there and just kind of has to kick Percy out. But if you notice, there's a third figure in this scene here. That third figure is actually none other than the author and executive producer, Rick Riordan, who, well, without him, none of this would exist. He then returns home to his apartment in New York, where we are meeting his stepfather for the first time, Gabe Ugliano, who ironically has a New York Jets jersey of Zach Wilson hanging up in the corner. Not really sure why, but nice little joke and a nod to current day events as well. Zach Wilson's the current quarterback of the New York Jets, even though he was benched multiple times. Not to get sidetracked here. But we then meet Sally Jackson properly this time in present day instead of a flashback in Percy's memory. During this course, Percy and Sally are talking. Sally kind of lets slip that she's been talking to Mr. Brunner, and there's Percy starting to get a little weirded out. During this course, Sally decides it's time for them to go to Montauk. She's already reserved the cabin. She already has this plan set up that we as the audience don't know about, nor does Percy. We are essentially Percy at this point in time. What this comes out to be is where she then tries to tell Percy, well, not try here, she actually does tell Percy that his father is a god. Not capital G, of course, as because Percy likes to make the joke here. He
wasn't a man at all. He was a god.
You fell in love with God? Like Jesus?
Grover shows up, which you get the comedy here as well, and it plays beat for beat from the book here. And we see the Minotaur then attack them. This Minotaur scene, for me, was just sheer perfection from the book. The addition of having Percy with Riptide here in the show form works very well because it lets you see how Percy was able to break the Minotaur's horn instead of just sheer force. I mean, that is a huge horn on the Minotaur here. I know younger me was probably envisioning, a smaller horn, you can probably snap it off. No, that thing was massive, essentially. And he took a swing at the Minotaur and missed, but then he defeats the Minotaur. But in that process of defeating the Minotaur and the Minotaur attack, Grover got him to safety at the cost of losing his mom. The effects here with the Minotaur, Sally turning to dust, it was right out of the book, lifted right from the pages. I couldn't be more happy with the effort put in here. and the choice to use no score and just the sound of the rain and the Minotaur grunts. The episode ends with Percy still passing out, and we see kind of these heroes from camp surrounding him, or silhouettes of people surrounding him, and then you see a centaur along the hilltop, and Percy just fades back out to black. I thought this was a great way to end the first 4 chapters of the book and the first episode. Your pacing stays good, and you get that sense of character arc within the episode for Percy of feeling just alone and isolated. The episode, by him losing his mother at the end, really just shows and lets him feel isolated. In the book, he still had Grover as a friend. Here, he doesn't know if he can trust Grover anymore because Grover got him kicked out of school. Yes, he's tried to explain to him in the car, but I don't think Percy at this point fully trusts Grover yet. And while he doesn't have Mr. Brunner, well, he hasn't seen him in his true form yet either until the very end of the episode, and he hasn't been able to process this yet. I think this sets up a interesting dynamic we didn't necessarily have in the book and can let these characters grow and develop more fully by overcoming that conflict that we initially have them see at the beginning. Now, what are your thoughts? Feel free to leave them below. Are you liking the series so far? Are you not liking it? And if you could, give us a thumbs up if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot. Till next time, demigods, stay awesome.